The message came at 6:17 on a Thursday evening, while I was sitting at my kitchen table in Memphis with a plate of catfish getting cold in front of me. Uncle Leon, I need you to understand something. Marcus's family wants the ceremony to feel intimate. They think it would be less complicated if you didn't come. I read it twice, then a third time. I am 68 years old. I spent 32 years repairing city buses, raised a girl who was not mine by blood from the time she was 9 years old, worked double shifts to keep a roof over her head, and signed the first check for the wedding she had been dreaming about since she was 25. But apparently, I was complicated. I set my phone down beside my plate. I did not call her. I did not curse. I did not ask her to reconsider. I opened the folder where I kept the wedding contracts, looked at the names printed on the signature lines, and made 3 phone calls. By noon the next day, the riverfront venue was gone, the charter bus was gone, and the catering package for 180 people was no longer my responsibility. My niece, my girl, the child I had raised like my own daughter, did not know any of that yet. That was the part that stayed with me. She thought she had removed me from her wedding. She had no idea how much of the wedding had been built around me. My sister, Renee, died when her daughter, Danielle, was 9. Breast cancer took her fast. One summer, she was standing barefoot in my backyard, laughing because I had burned the ribs. By Thanksgiving, I was sitting beside her hospital bed while she tried to tell me everything I needed to know about raising a little girl. "She likes the crust cut off," Renee whispered. I told her, "I can handle a sandwich." "She hates thunderstorms. Then she'll sleep in my room. She acts tough when she's scared." "So did you." Renee smiled, but there were tears in her eyes. Then she squeezed my hand and said the only thing that mattered. "Don't let her feel like nobody chose her." I promised, and for the next 29 years, I kept that promise. Danielle moved into my little brick house 2 weeks after we buried her mother. I was 39, divorced, and had no children of my own. I knew how to rebuild a transmission. I knew how to stretch $40 until payday. I knew how to tell when a diesel engine was about to fail by the sound it made in the morning. I did not know how to braid hair. The first time I tried, Danielle looked in the mirror and cried. The second time, she laughed. By the 3rd week, I had swallowed my pride and asked one of the ladies at church to teach me. Mrs. Coleman sat me down in the fellowship hall with a mannequin head and said, "Leon, if you pull that child's edges out, Renee is going to haunt you." I learned. Maybe not well, but well enough. I learned parent-teacher conferences. I learned how to stand outside a dressing room while a teenage girl asked if a dress made her look fat. I learned which boys were trouble before she did. I learned that sometimes a child does not want advice. Sometimes she wants you to sit in the living room and listen while she says the same thing 6 different ways. At 17, Danielle wrecked my Buick. She called me from the side of the road, sobbing. Before I even asked about the car, I said, "Baby girl, are you hurt?" She told me later that was the moment she knew I was her father. Not her uncle, her father. I never asked her to call me Dad. She called me Uncle Leon because that was what she had always called me. But when she graduated from college, she hugged me in front of everybody and whispered, "I only made it because of you." When she bought her first condo, I fixed every cabinet in the kitchen. When she got laid off at 31, I paid her mortgage for 4 months and never mentioned it again. When she met Marcus, I wanted to like him. I really did. Marcus Reed came from money, not billionaire money. But the kind of money where people said things like summer home and family office without sounding like they were joking. His father, Charles, owned a chain of medical supply companies. His mother, Vivian, sat on museum boards and knew exactly which fork to use before I had even unfolded my napkin. The first time Danielle brought Marcus to my house, he shook my hand firmly. He called me Mr. Carter. He complimented my ribs. He laughed at my stories. I thought, all right, maybe this young man has some sense. And for a while, I believed he did. Then the wedding planning started. Danielle had always wanted a big wedding. Her mother had kept a picture of a riverboat wedding in an old magazine, and Danielle used to stare at it when she was a teenager. So when Marcus proposed, she called me before she posted anything online. "Uncle Leon," she said, crying and laughing at the same time. "I'm getting married." I was happy for her, honestly happy. She came over that Sunday with a binder full of ideas. She wanted a ceremony beside the Mississippi River. She wanted live music. She wanted peach roses because those had been her mother's favorite. And she wanted a reception big enough to include everybody who had loved her through the years. At least, that was what she said then. Marcus's parents offered to cover the rehearsal dinner and the honeymoon. Danielle had saved some money. Marcus said he would handle the photographer and entertainment. I offered to take care of 3 things: the venue, the food, transportation for older relatives, and out-of-town guests. It was not cheap. The venue alone required a $20,000 deposit. The caterer required 10. The bus company wanted 5 up front, but I had money put away. I had sold the duplex I owned after retirement, and my pension covered my life just fine. I told Danielle, "Your mother didn't get to see this day. Let me do something that makes me feel like she's here." She cried. She put her arms around my neck and said, "I love you." That was 9 months before she told me not to come. The change did not happen all at once. That is something people miss when they hear stories like mine. Nobody wakes up on Monday loving you and becomes a stranger by Tuesday. It happens in inches. First, Danielle stopped asking my opinion. Then she started saying, "Marcus's mother thinks. Marcus's mother thinks the flowers should be white. Marcus's mother thinks the guest list is too large. Marcus's mother thinks the band is too casual. Marcus's mother thinks the reception should begin with a formal champagne toast." I would smile and say, "Well, it's your wedding, baby girl." But after a while, I noticed something. Whenever Danielle talked about my side of the family, she said, "my relatives." Whenever she talked about Marcus's family, she said, "the family." At first, I told myself I was being sensitive. Then came the seating chart. Danielle brought it to my house on a Saturday afternoon. I saw Charles and Vivian seated at the front. I saw Marcus's grandmother. I saw 2 of his aunts. I saw Danielle's biological father, Raymond, in the second row. And I did not see my name. I thought it was a mistake. "Where am I sitting?" I asked. She looked down at the paper. "Oh, we're still working on that." "Working on what?" "The front is just complicated." There was that word again. Complicated. Raymond, her biological father, had not raised her. He disappeared when Renee got sick. He sent birthday cards some years and excuses other years. The longest conversation he had with Danielle before she turned 20 was probably the one where he asked her to tell her mother to stop calling him about child support. But when Danielle got engaged, Raymond reappeared. He had a new wife, a new job, a nice suit. And apparently, according to Marcus's family, a biological father looked better in photographs than the uncle who had actually done the raising. I asked Danielle, "Is Raymond walking you down the aisle?" She kept her eyes on the seating chart. "Yes." I felt something move inside my chest. Not anger. Not yet. Something quieter. I said, "That is your choice." She looked relieved. That hurt more than I expected. I had imagined walking her down the aisle. I am not ashamed to admit that, but I had never told her. She did not owe me that moment. Love is not alone. You do not get to keep a list of everything you did for a child and demand repayment in public. So I swallowed it. I told myself that Raymond was her father too. Maybe she needed something from him that I could not understand. I even bought him a drink when we met at a tasting event. He called me big man and slapped me on the shoulder like we were old friends. I wanted to knock his hand off. Instead, I smiled. I kept telling myself the wedding was not about me. Then, 6 weeks before the ceremony, I received the message. "Do not come. Not please sit somewhere else. Not would you mind skipping the family photographs. Do not come." I stared at those words until my dinner went cold. A few minutes later, another message came. "Please don't make this harder than it has to be. I hope you understand." That was when I called her. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Uncle Leon." Her voice was tight. I said, "Tell me in your own words." She was quiet. I could hear traffic behind her. Then she sighed. "Marcus's parents are uncomfortable." "About what?" "About the family dynamic." "What family dynamic?" "You know." "No, baby girl." "I don't know." "Explain it to me." Another pause. She said, "Raymond is going to be there as my father." And Marcus's family feels like having you there in such a visible role could confuse things. Ask, ask, ask. I almost laughed. Confuse who? It's not just that. What else? Some of the guests don't know our whole history. I leaned back in my chair. Our history? She rushed through the next part. Uncle Leon, please. I'm already stressed. I don't want to spend my wedding explaining why my uncle acts like my dad and why my actual father wasn't around and why there are two father figures. Marcus's mother thinks it could become a distraction. A distraction. I looked around my kitchen, at the refrigerator where Danielle's college graduation picture still sat under a magnet, at the wall where I had marked her height until she was 15, at the cabinet where I kept the chipped blue mug she made me in middle school that said "World's Best Uncle Dad." I asked her one question. Do you want me there? She said nothing. I waited. Danielle, she finally whispered. I think it would be easier if you weren't. I nodded, even though she could not see me. All right. She sounded surprised. All right? Yes? You're not angry? I didn't say that. I just don't want drama. You won't get any from me. I ended the call. Then I sat there for another 10 minutes. That was when something became clear. I had spent weeks telling myself not to make the wedding about me, but Danielle and Marcus had no problem making my money part of it. The riverfront venue was in my name. The catering contract was in my name. The transportation agreement was in my name. Every payment had come from my account. I was apparently too complicated to attend, but my credit card was simple enough. The next morning, I called Mr. Jacobs, the manager at the venue. I knew there would be penalties. I was prepared for that. I said, I need to cancel the reservation. He sounded surprised. Mr. Carter, the wedding is 6 weeks away. I know. You'll forfeit a portion of the deposit. I understand. We also have another family interested in that date. Then I suppose this is good news for them. He hesitated. May I ask if everything is all right? I looked out my kitchen window. No, I said, but the contract is mine. That was the first call. The second was to the catering company. The owner, Denise, had known Danielle since she was a teenager. She was shocked. I told her only what she needed to know. I won't be hosting the event anymore. She asked, Is Danielle okay? I said, You'll have to ask her. The third call was the bus company. That one took less than 5 minutes. By noon, it was done. I had lost money. Not nearly as much as I would have spent going forward, but enough to make the decision hurt. That mattered to me. I did not want to pretend my choice was free. Boundaries often cost something. Sometimes peace costs money. Sometimes self-respect costs relationships. I was willing to pay. What I would not do was pay to be erased. For the next 4 days, I heard nothing. Danielle sent me one message about a package that had arrived at my house by mistake. Marcus sent nothing. I assumed the vendors had not contacted them yet. Then Sunday morning came. I had just returned from church when my phone began ringing. Danielle. I looked Crowan twice before answering. She did not say hello. What did you do? I put my keys on the counter. What are you talking about? The venue says the wedding is canceled. No. The venue says my reservation is canceled. Why would you do that? Because I'm not hosting a wedding I'm not welcome to attend. Her voice jumped an octave. You can't be serious. I am. You promised me that venue. I promised to pay for a place where we would celebrate together. That is not the same thing. It became the same thing Thursday. She started crying. At least, I think she was crying. It might have been anger. With 6 weeks left, do you know what you've done? Yes. You ruined my wedding. No, Danielle. I withdrew from it. You canceled the caterer too? Yes. And the buses? Yes. Oh my God. Then I heard a man's voice in the background. Marcus. What is he saying? Danielle shouted, He canceled everything. That word echoed in my kitchen. Everything. I almost corrected her. I had not canceled everything. I had canceled what belonged to me. They still had the flowers, the photographer, the band, her dress, the honeymoon, Marcus's parents' rehearsal dinner. But I understood why it felt like everything. I had been carrying more of the weight than she wanted to admit. Marcus took the phone. "Mr. Carter, we need to talk like adults." I said, "Then talk." "This is incredibly vindictive." "Is it?" "Yes. Danielle made a difficult personal decision, and you are punishing her financially." I stayed quiet. He continued. "My parents were trying to avoid an uncomfortable situation." I said, "Your parents were uncomfortable with me attending a wedding I helped pay for." "That's an oversimplification." "Then simplify it better." He exhaled sharply. "You know Raymond is her father." "I do." "And you are her uncle." "I know exactly who I am." "Then why can't you respect boundaries?" That almost impressed me. A man helping remove me from the wedding was giving me a lecture about boundaries. I said, "Marcus, that is exactly what I'm doing." He went silent. I continued. "Danielle told me she wanted a boundary. I respected it. I will not attend. I also created one of my own. I will not finance celebrations where my presence is considered an embarrassment." "No one said embarrassment." She said distraction. "That is different. Not from where I'm sitting." He lowered his voice. "Can you just restore the reservations? We can work this out." "Is Danielle inviting me?" He said nothing. I waited. Then he said, "That's a separate issue." "No. It's the only issue." He hung up. By Monday, the entire family knew. That was when the calls started. My cousin Bernard said I had gone too far. My Aunt Lorraine said she would have done worse. One of Danielle's friends called me and said I was destroying her big day out of pride. My church friend Reggie asked me the only question that mattered. "Leon, if she invited you now, would you go?" I thought about it. "No." He nodded slowly. "Then this ain't about an invitation anymore." He was right. By then, an invitation would have been a receipt. Proof that my money had purchased a chair. I did not want that. 3 days later, Danielle showed up at my house. She had a key, but I had changed the locks the year before after losing a set, so she had to knock. When I opened the door, I almost did not recognize her expression. She looked tired. Not bridal magazine tired, not busy tired. She looked like a woman whose world had suddenly stopped obeying her. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. She walked into the living room and immediately looked at the fireplace mantel. There was a picture of her mother there. Next to it was a picture of Danielle at 12, wearing a crooked science fair ribbon. She stared at both. Then she turned to me. "You really canceled it?" "Yes. We can't find another riverfront venue." "I know. The only place available is a hotel ballroom near the airport." "That sounds practical." She looked at me like I had slapped her. "You don't care. Be careful with that sentence." Her eyes filled. "You know what I mean." "No. I don't think you know what you mean." She sat down. I stayed standing. After a moment she said, "Marcus's parents are furious." "I imagine. They said this makes us look unstable." I almost smiled. "So that is the emergency?" "No. It sounds like it." She rubbed her forehead. "They invited important people." "Important to whom?" "Uncle Leon." "I'm asking." She looked away. "Business partners, family friends." "And those people cannot eat chicken in a hotel ballroom?" "That's not the point." "Then tell me the point." She stood up. "The point is that I have planned this wedding for almost a year, and now everything is falling apart because you got your feelings hurt." There it was. I had been waiting for the honest version. I said, "You are right about one thing." She folded her arms. My feelings were hurt. Her expression softened, just a little. I continued. "But that is not why I canceled." "Then why?" "Because the moment you told me not to come, the relationship changed." Her eyes narrowed. "What does that mean?" "It means I finally understood the arrangement." "What arrangement?" "I was family when you needed a father." "That's not fair." "I was family when you needed tuition." "Stop." "I was family when your transmission died." "You're keeping score now?" "No. I'm remembering." She turned away. I said, "I was family when you were sick, when you were scared, when you needed help buying your first home, when Marcus asked me for my blessing before he proposed." She looked back at me. "But when the people you wanted to impress entered the room, Suddenly, I became an uncle whose presence needed explaining. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I hated seeing them. Do not misunderstand me. Even when a child breaks your heart, some part of you still wants to wipe her face. But love does not require pretending. She whispered, "It wasn't my idea." I said nothing. She sat back down. It was Vivian. I had suspected that. Still, hearing it mattered. She said Raymond needed to be presented as my father. She said people would ask questions if you were too involved. Too involved. She said Marcus's family has a certain reputation. And you agreed. I didn't at first, but eventually. She looked at her hands. She kept saying the wedding was about joining two families, and that I needed to stop bringing old complications into my new life. I felt my jaw tighten. Did Marcus agree? She took too long to answer. Yes. That hurt in a different way. I had trusted him. I asked, "And Raymond?" He liked the idea. Of course he did. A man who had missed most of her childhood had been offered the best seat in the house, with none of the years that earned it. Danielle said, "I thought you would understand." I laughed once, quietly. "Baby girl, that is the part I cannot get past." She looked up. "You thought I would understand being erased? I thought you knew what you meant to me. That is exactly why you should have known better." She covered her face. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Then she said something I did not expect. "Marcus didn't know how much you were paying." I frowned. "What?" "He knew you were helping. He didn't know the venue and catering were all you. That changed the shape of things." "Why not?" His mother assumed my side had it covered. My side. I didn't correct her. "Why?" She looked ashamed. "Because I wanted them to think I came from more than I did." That sentence broke something open, not because I was insulted, because suddenly I understood. Danielle was ashamed, not of me exactly, of where we came from, of the little brick house, of the city bus uniform I wore for 32 years, of church fish fries, of family reunions in folding chairs under park shelters. She had spent years climbing into rooms where people talked softly about expensive things. And somewhere along the way, she started believing that the people who loved her before those rooms were proof of a life she needed to outgrow. I sat across from her. "Danielle, look at me." She did. "I was never angry that you wanted more." She cried harder. "I wanted more for you too." "I know." "No, I don't think you do. I worked nights because I wanted you to walk into places I never could. I wanted you to have choices your mother and I never had." She wiped her cheeks. "But I did not work that hard so you could become ashamed of the road that brought you there." She whispered, "I'm not ashamed of you." "Then why couldn't I be seen?" She had no answer. That was our last conversation for 2 weeks. The wedding moved to the airport hotel. The guest list dropped from 180 to 94. Vivian refused to pay the increased catering costs because, according to Danielle, she had already contributed enough. Charles offered a loan, not a gift, a loan. Raymond promised to help. Then he stopped answering calls when Danielle asked for a specific amount. That did not surprise me. What surprised me was Marcus. He came to my house alone 11 days before the wedding. I almost did not let him in. He stood on my porch wearing jeans and an old college sweatshirt. Without the tailored suit, he looked younger, more uncertain. "Mr. Carter, I owe you an apology." I waited. He continued. "I believe things about your relationship with Danielle that weren't true." "Such as?" "That you were more like a generous uncle than a parent." "Who told you that?" He looked embarrassed. "Danielle." That one landed hard. I opened the door wider. "Come inside." We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I had read the message. Marcus told me Danielle had always minimized how much I had done. She told his family I had helped out after her mother died. Helped out. Like I picked her up from school twice. Like I bought groceries once in a while. She never told them she lived with me until college. Never told them I paid her tuition. Never told them she came home to my house every Christmas. Never told them I sat beside her mother when she died and promised to raise her. Marcus looked sick. She told me Raymond came back into her life after her mother died. I stared at him. That is a lie. I know that now. Who told you? Raymond. I raised an eyebrow. Marcus gave a humorless laugh. He bragged about how he was finally getting his chance to walk her down the aisle. He said, "You had done all the hard work for him." For the first time since this began, I felt something close to satisfaction. Not because Danielle had been exposed, because lies do not stay arranged forever. Eventually, one of them falls over. Marcus said, I asked Danielle what he meant, and she told me everything. I sat back. He looked at me. My mother was wrong. I said, "Your mother was not the one getting married." He nodded. So was I. That answer I respected. Then he surprised me. I told Danielle I won't marry her unless she tells the truth at the wedding. I frowned. What truth? The truth about you. I shook my head immediately. No. He looked confused. No? I don't want a speech. It's not about a speech. It sounds like one. She needs to stop pretending. That is between you and her. He leaned forward. Mr. Carter, I love Danielle, but I need to know she can build a life without lying about where she came from. I studied him. That was the first time I heard Marcus speak like a man instead of someone's son. I said, "Then handle your marriage." He nodded. Before he left, he asked me one more thing. "If she invites you, will you come?" I looked toward the refrigerator. The old graduation picture was still there. No. He seemed disappointed. I said, "Not because I don't love her." Then why? Because right now, if I go, she will spend the whole day wondering whether I came because she wanted me there or because she needed to fix what happened. Marcus considered that. Then he nodded. I understand. The wedding took place on a Saturday afternoon in the hotel ballroom. I was not there. I spent the morning at church, helping repair a storage shed. Around 4 o'clock, my phone buzzed. It was a picture from Aunt Lorraine. Danielle stood in her wedding dress beside an empty chair. On the chair was a framed photograph of her mother. Next to Renee's picture was the blue ceramic mug Danielle had made me in middle school, world's best Uncle Dad. I stared at the picture for a long time. Then my phone rang. "Danielle," I answered. Neither of us spoke at first. Finally, she said, "I got married." I know. Her voice shook. I told everyone. Told them what? The truth. I closed my eyes. She continued. I told them Raymond is my biological father, and I told them you raised me. I said nothing. I told them I asked the man who raised me not to come because I was afraid people I barely knew would judge me. Her voice cracked. I told them it was the worst thing I've ever done. I sat down on the edge of the church steps. She said, "I'm not asking you to forgive me today." That's good? She laughed through her tears. I figured you'd say that. I'm old, not predictable. You're both. That made me smile. For a second, she sounded like my girl again. Then she became serious. I left your chair empty. Danielle, I know you said you didn't want a gesture. Then why did you do it? Because I wanted everyone to see there was someone missing. I looked out at the parking lot. People were leaving church. Families were climbing into cars. Children were running ahead of their parents. Danielle whispered, "I should have seen it before." Seen what? That you weren't complicated. I swallowed. You were the simple part. I could not speak for a moment. Then I said, "Go enjoy your husband." Uncle Leon? Yes? I love you. I love you too, baby girl. We did not become perfect after that. Life does not work that way. Forgiveness is not a switch. It is a road. Sometimes you walk fast. Sometimes you sit down. Danielle and I spent almost 5 months seeing each other, only occasionally. She started therapy. So did Marcus. They moved into a smaller apartment after realizing how much debt they had taken on, trying to impress people who did not matter. Vivienne did not speak to me for nearly a year. I survived. Raymond disappeared again 3 months after the wedding. That hurt Danielle. I did not say I told you so. There are victories you do not celebrate when someone you love is the one bleeding. One Sunday the following spring, Danielle came to my house, carrying a grocery bag. She put it on the counter. "What's this?" I asked. "Catfish." "I have catfish. Not the way I cook it." "You don't know how to cook catfish," she smiled. "Then I guess you better teach me." We stood in that kitchen for 2 hours. I showed her how much cornmeal to use. She used too much salt. I complained. She told me I was dramatic. It felt ordinary. That was what made it beautiful. Before she left, she placed an envelope on the table. Inside was a check. It was not for the money I lost canceling the wedding. It was nowhere close. I looked at her. "What is this?" "The first payment." "I'm not taking this." "Yes, you are." "No." She folded her arms. "You always taught me that grown people pay their debts. You don't owe me for raising you." "This isn't for raising me." She tapped the check. "This is for the deposits." I shook my head. "Danielle?" She said, "Please." There was something different in her voice. Not guilt, responsibility. So I took it, not because I needed the money, because she needed to give it. As she walked toward the door, I called her name. She turned. I said, "You know paying me back doesn't fix what happened." "I know, and I'm not forgetting it." "I know, but that doesn't mean we can't build something better." She nodded. "I know that too." After she left, I sat at the same kitchen table where this whole thing had started. I thought about my sister, about the promise I made beside her hospital bed. Don't let her feel like nobody chose her. For years, I believed keeping that promise meant choosing Danielle no matter what. Choosing her when she was scared. Choosing her when she failed. Choosing her when she needed money. Choosing her when she hurt me. But I had learned something. Choosing someone does not mean abandoning yourself. Love without boundaries is not always love. Sometimes it is fear. Fear that if you stop giving, people will leave. Fear that if you say no, you will lose your place in their lives. Fear that protecting your dignity makes you selfish. I do not believe that anymore. I still love my girl. I will probably love her until the day they put me beside her mother. But she knows now that my love cannot be used as a blank check. She knows family is not a title you bring out when the bill arrives. And I know something too. Sometimes the hardest thing a father can do is stop rescuing the child he loves long enough for that child to see what she has become. I did not cancel Danielle's wedding. She got married. She danced. She laughed. She started a life with the man she loved. What I canceled was my participation in my own disrespect. And looking back, that was the one reservation I should have ended a long time ago. By Veit, love is strongest when it makes room for both kindness and self-respect. Leon never stopped loving Danielle, but he learned that caring for family does not mean accepting disrespect or hiding who you are. Sometimes a healthy boundary gives people the space to grow, take responsibility, and find their way back to each other with greater honesty, gratitude, and a warmer kind of love. A small note for you. This story was created and fictionalized by AI for entertainment, while also sharing a positive life lesson about family, dignity, forgiveness, and hope.